Hello and welcome to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast, where today we will be conversing with very worshipful brother Norman Mcevoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
Thanks for coming to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast today. I'm Matthew Apple, a Mason down here in Washington, and along with me is our very worshipful brother David Colbeth, who's also in Washington, and we have our compatriots to the north, Connor Massey and worshipful brother Stephen Chung of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia in the Yukon, and our special guest today is Norman Mcevoy, very worshipful brother, Norman Mcevoy, also of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia in the Yukon. Welcome, brother Norman.
Thank you.
So Norman, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your history in Masonry?
My history in Masonry started actually in 1956. And I was the youngest of four sons to James Mcevoy, who was a worshipful master of Belfast Lodge number 257 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And when he passed away, his last wish was that I become a Freemason. So, which I did at our mother lodge. All our family were there. And that was on a Saturday night, April the 27th. And I sailed for Canada the following Tuesday. So my experiences start there. And so I was wearing a lovely little Masonic pin, which was my father's. But I didn't make contact with a lodge until I ended up in Kelowna, British Columbia, 1956.
Go Prince Charles Lodge.
I visited this lodge, Prince Charles, and they were doing a thing called American work. And man, they were in suits and bow ties, and they ever strutting their stuff. And down the hall was Prince George Lodge, which were a bunch of old stuffy Canadians. So I went to Prince Charles and had a nice time, and then got transferred and been all over this province and the Yukon territories, and ended up in Victoria here in 1991. Incidentally, I got married in 1956, good life, 58 or 50, one of those things. She's not listening. So we're married 60 years. And two daughters. My Masonic career really began when I came to Victoria here in 91. And I was Danny Boy the Clown. And one of the Shriners introduced me to Victoria Columbia number 1. And I've been through the chairs. I'm a past Grand Steward. And my real efforts have been within the Holy Royal Arch. And I'm a past Grand First Principal in the Holy Royal Arch here. And that is the only major title that I have had. I was secretary of, I think this is what you want to hear. I was secretary of Victoria Columbia Lodge number 1 about 2003. And I got very annoyed because when I was director of Masonic education, I could never get a paper through. It was always, oh, we've got a degree going tonight, we need the time. Oh, so save it for next. So I found myself at the secretary's desk one day with 2 pieces of paper, and it occurred to me that maybe you could put in another piece of paper, which would still only have the one stamp. It wouldn't cost any more money. So I started to do that for the members. A few other people heard about it. they wanted. Then somebody showed me how to do something with the email. So I started to do it that way. Then more people heard about it. Then they wanted it too. And then one day in a lodge, a gentleman tapped me on the shoulder and said, well, why don't you use email? So I started to do that. The email went along just fine until Shaw Communications started telling me I had too many people. So I divided that up and did forward, 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 forward. Then one day I'm in lodge and another gentleman said to me, I'm out of work, but I do computer setups. And I said, so why don't we do that? So we did that and we created a thing called TheEducator. So that got to around 200 or 300. And then he had to bow out. No, he bowed out at about 700. So today I call him my guru, a fellow by the name of Stephen Noble. And just this morning, we now have 1,333 direct recipients of TheEducator.
I just signed on while you were talking, so now you have 1374.
1334.
Oh.
So anyway, but that's, so my audience is all over the world. I've been surprised. Recently, I did a paper on China, and I've been surprised that I've been getting an increased recipients in China. I don't know any names. I don't ever ask for that. So it's just another blip, and up we go. So it's been a wonderful experience. And I do not allow anything to do with religion or politics in TheEducator. So I don't know what else I could tell you about, and I love what I do, and I do what I love, and I'm very blessed with that.
So what sorts of things are in there? There's not religion and politics. What else is there in life? Do you do esoteric Masonic stuff, or do you do the roles of the officers, or symbolism, or?
I like stories. I like things that have happened. I like historical pieces. I've done some on religion, but not on a specific religion or on faith. So about 4 years ago, I put together, you started another line. I started to get myself quite upset with some things that were happening. So I put together a manual called A Journey to the Spirit. And that takes a Freemason or a non-Freemason literally through what Freemasonry is and through the 3 degrees in as much explanation as possible. And then at the end, the continuation of Freemasonry, which is the Holy Royal Arch. So that was about 4 years ago. And together with a young man down in that right-hand corner by the name of Connor, I have met him, and what we are now attempting, we're not attempting, we're going to do this, is I believe that when I wrote this, I wrote it as an 80-year-old. I'm only 85, so I wrote it as an 80-year-old, and so I don't think I felt I was relating to what I call Generation 3. I say Generation 1 is over 70, 45 to 70, under 45. Generation 1, 2, 3. So now I feel that I really need to make better contact with Generation 3. And Connor's going to help me do that.
What the viewers don't see and what the listeners obviously don't see is around my desk, I have like 50 or so different Masonic books that I have been using as references for assisting in this project. So it's been quite fun for me as well.
Now, he was over at the house this morning, and I gave him some books by a man by the name of Wilmshurst, who was just absolutely brilliant. I don't know if anybody has read his work. There he is. Anyway, Wilmshurst has a history. He was more of a politician and a chemist than he was a Mason, but he was very, very instrumental in getting getting craft masonry alive and well. One of the early beginners. with a person like Robert Murray. He was in that little club. But his thoughts are very esoteric and very meaningful, and that's why I like him so much. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to, and in my writings, I'm trying to get a message through that the reader can identify with. Big words, religion, politics do not appear and never will. How am I doing?
You're doing great. You're doing great. So, Norm, how does the website come together? Do you have a team or a single person, or who posts your papers?
Website is owned by myself.
Yeah.
It is whatever the word is, registered at Ottawa. So it's mine, very purposely, because I felt it was only fair if I was going to be making a statement that it be my statement. And I don't really get along too well with the I, we, them, us. And so if anybody has a dispute, then they're more than welcome, whatever way they need to discuss that with me, or send me a note, or do whatever, or just...
What I think he was referring to is the technical part. So I think he's referring to your guru.
Oh, my guru, that's Stephen Noble. He's brilliant.
Gotcha.
I've been very, very fortunate. When I just started with the emails, I had a young man step forward and say, I'll format it for you. I said, format, what's that? So he did that. And then I believe very, very deeply in the great architect of the universe. So he was his time. He got a job with the provincial government, and I'm standing in lodge, and I think I wasn't even in my own lodge, and I was talking to a gentleman, and I thought I knew, and I said, how's life with you? And he said, the business I had has just gone bust, and I'm remarried, and I got 2 kids, and I said, what were you doing? And he said, well, I built websites. Oh, you did? So anyway, he ended up building a website for me. And then about 3 years ago, I think it would have been, I'm talking with him, and he said, Norm, I used to do this for you for $40, $50 a month, but yeah, I'm so busy, I need 120 or whatever it was a month. And I said, so I was telling somebody about that, and he said, well, that's what I do. And that's when I met Steve Noble. And Steve, I now call my guru, because he helps me with every darn thing, and bills, and they build something, and then he tells me what he did. It's fabulous.
And now Norm has over 400 papers on his site, and he's vetted
400 and about
every one
3 as of the other day.
And he's personally vetted each and everything that goes on his site.
Well, it's beautifully done. It's beautifully done. It's a beautiful website, very well laid out, and lots of good information. So your guru has done well.
All of this is, I am not a manager. I have been told this many, many times. In fact, I have a plaque that tells me by a friend who I'm a leader. I am not a manager. I will build something and get it to where it wants to go. Then somebody else can take over, because the fun's all gone for me. Right? I don't want to be managing people and finding out if they wash their bum or not. I'm not interested in that. So that's what I do, and I select the papers. If you were reading The Educator, you will see adapted from in quite a number of papers. So I'll take a paper that somebody wrote, and I will agree with some parts of it, or think that something else could be said a little better. So I put adapted from a paper written by. So I give as much credit as I possibly can. And then I always put a comment at the bottom as to why I chose that paper. How am I doing?
You're doing great. I apologize. I keep stepping on you, and I don't mean to do that at all. I was just going to say, we've talked a lot about your website, but I don't think we have actually given the address. It's TheEducator.ca.
Yes, but what you did, there's 2 E's.
Yes, TheEducator.ca.
And then educator at shaw.ca.
There's no
find
Shaw in there. There's no Shaw. It's just
TheEducator.ca.
.ca. Yeah, TheEducator.
But if you reach me by email, you can do it the other way. There's different ways to get me.
For sure.
My email is really, really easy to remember.
Well, I think, Norm, we probably don't want to give out your email to everybody. We hope this show goes around the world, goes international, but to have everybody just have your email out there, we don't, a little bit of privacy issues there. So they could probably go to the website, and I think they can contact you via the website. At least they can subscribe to the newsletter.
It matters not to me. There is no cost to a subscription. It is free, and it will always be free.
And what we can do is we can leave the information on how to reach Norman's website down in the description below,
Exactly.
or wherever the information may be about the podcast that you are currently listening to.
Absolutely.
If you type in The Educator into just a search engine, it's probably either the first or second or third access comes up. So I obviously got something else that nobody else had thought of or didn't want.
So, Norman, one of the things that we've sort of approached here, but we haven't actually come right down to, is your book, the Journey to the Spirit, was your way of explaining what is a Mason and what that means. Now, we'll probably discuss this more in a second episode, but just as a primer for that, why don't you give us a brief summary of what that means to you?
Well, I started out to call it a book, and then it ended up being called a manual. Because one of the things I have done is leave, and this was an accident. I didn't know how to print both sides of a piece of paper. So I ended up with 120 pages of good on one side. So now what I'm encouraging people to do is to use the other side for notes on whatever they were reading on the right-hand side. So that's why I call it a manual. What I was trying to do was to show or to let people see the structure of Freemasonry. And the structure being entered apprentice is who we are. The fellowcraft is we are now going to make you and give you a way of life called a fellowcraft. And in the third degree, we're going to tell you a story about somebody who lived up to all of those ideals and it cost him his life. And I try to explain the tracing boards. And the reason I was talking with my good friend Connor is I believe that some of the work that I did, and there are no secrets involved in all of this, I believe that my method of communicating is 50 years older than his, okay, or 60 in that fact. But I really would like to use jargon or conversation that more reaches generation 3. That make sense? Some of my stuff may be boring. There might be a better way to explain better. I'm a big fan of the second degree, and I call it a journey to the spirit. Very, 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 very obviously, why is because to be a Freemason in every respect, all you have to really do is change your life and operate as instructed or as guided in the second degree. It's easy, as long as you understand what it says. And that's what I want him for.
I think that's a fantastic primer to a second episode that we can go into this with a little bit more detail. I'll
give you a simple example. People see a soldier standing at the bottom of those steps. What's he doing there? And why is he standing next to what looks like a lake? Okay, and there's a soldier standing there. Okay? Well, if you're going to go on a journey, first thing you need is water. You might need some food stuff, and that's what okay? And the soldier's standing there because you've got no business going there until you prove that you have the right to be there. We're making, you know, it seems once you see it, you can see it, right? But people just slop over it. 3, 5, and 7 steps. So what the hell?
Unfortunately, that happens with a lot of things in life. People don't delve into them as much as they could.
The only thing I remember hearing so often in lodge rooms was, "Don't worry about it. We're putting on a second degree tonight. We'll get that over with real quick."
Yep. Unfortunately, we gloss over some of the important things, and we'll expound upon them a little more. Hopefully, if Norman can come back to us here, we'll have a second episode with Very Worshipful Brother Norman Mcevoy. And until then, next week, on behalf of Stephen Chung and Connor and David and myself, thank you all very much for listening to us today. And Very Worshipful Brother Norman, we look forward to seeing you again.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be invited or to be asked. This is the thrill of a lifetime.
Well, we're flattered, and thank you very much.
Believe me.